Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our monthly lecture series. We have with us a very interesting evening ahead with this is Saloni Doshi, who will be introduced by my co-convener, Nayantara Palchaudhary. And over to you, Nayantara. Please take the program ahead.
Good evening, friends. It is indeed a great pleasure to introduce my dear friend Saloni Doshi, Director Space 118 Mumbai, who has kindly agreed to address us despite her very busy schedule. We both know each other through the work we do for the Alumni Association at the London School of Economics. Saloni is an art patron and has a huge collection of contemporary, tribal and aboriginal art from the subcontinent. Saloni graduated with politics and economics degrees from Xavier's Mumbai and went on to pursue her masters in media and communication at the LSE. She has a diploma in art criticism and theory and Indian art aesthetics. Friends, I was truly amazed to see how Saloni has developed a part of her warehouse space and converted it into an art studio and residencies, giving the artist community something that is lacking and much required in the city of Mumbai, that is space. Saloni loves photography and has contributed regularly to the art and culture columns in the Times of India. Saloni is bright, young, energetic, and is the founder chairperson of the Mumbai FICCI Ladies Organization. A few years ago, Saloni was awarded the prestigious Art Think South Asia Fellowship, sponsored by the British Council, Goethe Institute and Coach. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't want to stand between you and the wonderful presentation that Saloni has specially prepared for us. Over to you, Saloni.
Thank you, INTACH Kolkata chapter, Mr. G.M. Kapoor, as well as my dear friend Nayantara for inviting me to give this talk on museums of the future. It's an exciting topic for me to consider, given that I had actually written on this since 10 years ago for the Crest edition of Times of India, and much has changed since then, but for the better or worse, I hope I'm able to draw out these links today. So I wanted to tell you a small story of the third generation collectors, which is Uma and Uday Jain of the Bhumimal Art Gallery, whose collection spans over 70 years. And this is a small story in terms of how they've been trying to raise funds, finding a museum space in the prime Connaught Place area in Lutyens, Delhi. But their journey felt long and tiresome even before the project started. The Jains wanted to organize workshops, international artist exchange programs through residencies and camps, and they believed that public spaces to see live art and documentation is what's most lacking in the Indian art scenario. However, like them, there have been many collectors who have dreamt of showcasing their collections, which have been built over decades with passion and a lot of struggle. But the lack of funds, infrastructure, and support from the government often drives these efforts and dreams into the ground. Today, I will speak about a few of these efforts that did see the day of light and some of which who dared but failed. My talk will cover the realm of Indian museums of modern and contemporary Indian art. And most of these museums I discuss today are either privately held or private-public partnership or government-owned, but autonomously run, except for the Bihar Museum, which is owned and run by the government. So starting with the north, about 23 kilometers from Kullu, the Roerich Heritage Museum, founded in 1962, is one of the best-known museums in and around Manali. Nicholas Roerich was a Russian artist who arrived in the Himalayas after the revolution of 1917, died there in 1947. He was married to Helena Rorik and Devika Rani, the famous Indian actor who was his daughter-in-law. The Himachal Pradesh government and the Russian government have now formed a trust to run this art gallery as the Rorik Heritage Museum in his own residence, founded by his son Svetoslav Rorik. The artist's paintings of Kulu, Spiti, Lahore, showing the beauty of ice-covered valleys and peaks during early hours of the evening, have been housed on the ground floor of this gallery. The artist's private rooms have been preserved on the upper floor of this museum, and there are a few photos of Nicholas, his original works, quotations, writings, and those of the visitors and admirers also seen on display. Seen here is the Rorik Museum in New York, which was formed by his close friends who not only bought the building on the Upper West Side of Manhattan in New York, but also housed the collection that they themselves contributed to for their friend. Cutting almost 20 years or 30 years later, the Devi Art Foundation was started by avid collectors Lekha and Anupam Podar in 2008 in Gurgaon, with the objective to foster a dialogue from the Indian subcontinent amongst various art practitioners, comprehensively enhancing the understanding of our shared history with a special emphasis on outreach and education programs targeting students and people from various walks of life. The foundation premises were designed by Aniket Bhargav, once for the office space of the family, but a few years ago the building was sold and hence it lost its permanent space. Though since 2008, the Podars have organized some of the most spectacular shows of art that they have been collecting from all over the world with a focus. Their 2010 show, Resemble, invited Pakistan's top contemporary artist Professor Rashid Rana to curate contemporary Pakistani art. They believed that the diversity of their collection could be an important resource for learning and to create a culture where art does not remain cloistered within the confines of the institutions but becomes a matter of active discussion and debate. Shipping of artworks from Pakistan to India and money transfers were a problem. Plus, each artwork comes with its unique set of problems when it comes to installation and storage, said Anupam, who found it challenging to run a not-for-profit organization like his on a shoestring budget without any governmental support. The Podars did several shows, focused on textiles, art from Iran, Bangladesh, tribal and aboriginal art, and so on, and they still continue to do so at various locations, mostly coinciding with the India Art Fair in New Delhi. Given the poor state of the government-owned museums in our country, private museums play a crucial role of cultural educationists. One such example is the KNMA, sponsored by the Shiv Nadar Foundation in Delhi, which opened its doors to the public in 2010. As the first private museum of art in the north exhibiting modern and contemporary from India and the subcontinent, art collector Kiran Nadar of HCL Technologies launched her 13,000 square feet space in Noida as well as South Delhi at the DLF South City Mall, a site that attracts a confluence of ideas and creative thought processes rather than a mere exhibition space. KNMA aimed to bridge the gap between art and the public via curatorial initiatives, exhibitions, school and college workshops, art appreciation discourses, symposiums, and public programs. As its intent was to foster a museum-going culture in India, which doesn't exist currently. The ever-growing collection of the KNMA, with Kiran Nadar being one of India's most celebrated modern and contemporary art collector, the collection has largely focused on significant works from 20th century Indian artists and also engages with different art practices of younger contemporaries. KNMA is a noteworthy addition to the list of private art museums that are part of the shift occurring in the art world across the globe, with an increasing number of collectors bringing out their collections to the public. Kiran has been instrumental in springboarding South Asian artists even on the global art map. She was responsible for taking Nasreen Mohammadi's retrospective exhibition to the Met in New York and the Reina Sofia in Spain in 2016, and she was the chief sponsor of the India Pavilion, which is the second time in the history of the Venice Biennale last year in 2019. She is now working towards the launch of her new museum space to be built in Noida by the world-famous architect Sir David Arjay in Noida this year. The work will begin by the end of this year. It's currently been stalled due to COVID-19. I'm now moving to another state in the north, which is Bihar, where the Patna Museum in Bihar, being the third oldest museum in the country, was established in 1917 with a large collection of archaeological materials and artifacts. But the opening of the Bihar Museum in 2014, now that we have two museums in Patna that function complementarily in terms of the historical periods they cover. The Bihar Museum is one of India's youngest governmental museum that was inaugurated with the ambition of restoring Bihar's rich historical legacy. Now, as India retreats from cultural investments, the creation of a public institution is even more important and a model to follow. The Bihar Museum's most important feature is the fact that it was conceived as a museum. It was not a heritage structure, which what we have today, converted into a museum, but a contemporary space specifically designed to house art, archaeological objects, and artifacts, and to offer a unique visual experience. The Japanese architect Fumio Hikomaki's minimalist architecture makes a radical break to the colonialist tradition of museums as heritage spaces. Bihar-born artist Subodh Gupta, who lives in Delhi, whose works is the centerpiece of this museum, says that such a contemporary art space in Patna will inspire confidence in the artists of the region. This year, the Bihar Museum was to host the country's first Museum Biennale by showcasing collections from 14 public and private museums. A project of the Bihar state government, the concept of a Museum Biennale has been little heard of in India's cultural landscape, where art festivals and art fairs are given more prominence. The Bihar Museum Biennale was to run from March 25th to June 25th this year, showcasing works from the CSMVS, the Kiranadar Museum of Art, the NGMA Piramal Museum of Art, and the Virasat-e-Khalsa Anandpur Sahib, but due to COVID-19 pandemic meant the show had to be dropped and is now postponed to 2021. This is a remarkable achievement in the history of Indian modern and contemporary art. But at the same time, there is another museum that did open and laid its foundation stone, which I will mention now. In the mid-1990s, Rajiv and his wife Ruhi Savara, a lawyer by profession, embarked upon their collecting careers with Japanese Meiji art and 19th century Indo-Portuguese and Anglo-Indian furniture art. This gradually expanded into what eventually became the Rajiv and Ruhi Savara family collection, a distinguished and a little known personal collection of pre-modern and modern Indian art. Inspired by legends like J. Paul Lennon and Dr. Albert Barnes, they decided to house their seminal collection, which includes works by Raja Ravi Verma, all the Tagores, Hussain Raza Souza, Gaitonde, Ramkumar, Somnath Hor, Ganesh Pine, Meera Mukherjee, and Atul Dodia in Rishikesh at the footsteps of the sacred Ganga River. Launched this year in May, they laid their foundation stone for the museum under the guidance and the presence of the Chief Minister of Uttarakhand, Trivendra Singh Rawat. Rather than building an archive that represented a range of artists from these periods, Rajiv and Ruhi collected specific artists and created detailed trajectories of their career with an emphasis on their critically acclaimed phases in a model that highlights the achievements of these artists. So they built their collection only around these artists, but they collected extensively of these particular artists. The plans to build have been put on hold due to the pandemic, but the work will resume soon, and the principal architect of the museum is Virendra Vanklu, together with Ankit and Priyank Jain. The Karnataka Chitrakala Parishad, going south now, was established in 1960 by late M. Aryamurthy, the founder president, and the late Professor M.S. Nanjunga Rao, who was the founder secretary. The Parishad started off on a 2.5-acre land lease by the government of Karnataka with initial donations from industrialist H.K. Kejriwal to house his collection of 375 paintings and 255 sculptures is private collection in 5 gallery rooms. This collection comprised of folk art from all over India, contemporary Western art, Indian art from 1830s to 1995, art from Bengal and the progressives. Mr. Kejriwal followed the American way of opening private museums as a cultural repository and to share private collections that the public can become objects with the public so that they can become objects of tourism, a concept which was new to India then and even now. Svetoslav Rorik, who I mentioned about earlier, also donated several of his paintings and those of his father Nicholas Rorik to the Parishad, hence acquiring 2 dedicated galleries in their name. In 1964, Nanjunga Rao, his Chitrakala Vidyalaya was also added to the Parishad and obtained recognition as an art center by the States and National Lalit Kala Academy. By 1989, the Parishad had already added more galleries like the one which housed their state treasures of the Mysore painting, a graphic studio, a sculpture gallery and an open-air theatre, making it a full-fledged art complex. In 2003, 2 more large galleries for international and folk art were added, thus making it a landmark for visual culture in the city. The Karnataka Chitrakala Parishad now hosts a College of Fine Art and the Bangalore School of Visual Arts, offering graduate and postgraduate courses in visual arts for Indian and international students. The brainchild of the art collector and sugar baroness Rajshri Pati is Coimbatore College of Contemporary Art, COCA. I mention this because this is a project she dreamed of, but it did not take place. It was her personal dream that she wanted a museum and an institution for studying art as well as art history, as well as holding art fairs, seminars, residencies, and curated programs amidst a faculty of international and Indian artists and academics. She dedicated her 15,000 square feet space in an old textile mill to this project, which she was anxious to begin in 2011. Rajshri chose her hometown Coimbatore as the location for her dream, not because of the availability of easy real estate, but also because it is a university town of over 1 lakh students. The COCA of her imagination was to be a small institution, but offering very high quality education and shows, museum quality shows. Globally, art is owned by a very few people, but when private collectors like her open museums, everybody is able to enjoy it, even in the smallest pockets in India. The COCA Museum has had this same very aim, but with some difficulties. The construction was stalled, and whether it will ever emerge is a big question. So the Museum of Art and Photography will hence be South India's first major private art museum, situated in Bangalore, and the brainchild of Abhishek Podar, which started in 2018. MAP's mission is to take the art and culture to the heart of the community and make it the most inclusive museum in the country, with a special focus on people with disabilities. The flagship building, which includes galleries, an auditorium, an art and research library, an education center, a specialized research and conservation facility, and a cafe, has been set to be designed by leading Indian architect Soumitra Ghosh, working under the guidance of MAP's architectural committee led by Rahul Mehrotra. MAP is the custodian of a growing collection of over 18,000 works of art, predominantly from South Asia and dating from 10th century to the present. This is one of the most diverse and important collections in India, which includes historical and contemporary photography and popular culture, which is rarely seen in Indian museums. The collection covers 6 key areas: modern and contemporary, photography, folk and tribal, popular culture, textiles and craft, design, and pre-modern art. The Podar family are one of the most prominent collectors of Indian art in this country, and they are also the major contributors to the MAP collection, having donated approximately half their collection to the museum. The rest of their family's collection is on permanent loan to the museum. Impacting the next generation is MAP's paramount ambition. Its activities, even before the building has come up, have already expanded beyond the traditional museum space by offering the community a variety of educational programs and collaborating with schools to spark a passion for the arts from a young age. Now coming east to your home, Rakhi Sarkar, the Managing Director of the KMOMA, a private-public partnership between the state and central government and the private sector, envisaged the state-of-art museum on par with any major institution abroad. It was scheduled to start in 2013, which was meant to exhibit art from India and the world and have a major academic wing to promote cultural studies. The museum was to be designed by Herzog and de Meuron, who are the architects of the Tate Modern in London and the Beijing Olympic Stadium. The KMOMA complex consists of an art center and a culture city to be built over 10 acres of land in New Town, Rajarhat, Kolkata. Inspired by Indian temple architecture, its design is a synthesis of tradition and modernity, and its scheme of different levels ensures that visitors can get a glimpse of different floors from wherever they are. The museum would be equipped to show digital, new media, and installation art, which sadly today's state-run museums do not have, and the work which they were going to do had a 21st century agenda. Its objective was to bring under one roof a few broad areas of work, which is collection, preservation, and exhibition of fine art objects from India and abroad, dating from 18th century till contemporary times, and the promotion of art education and research. But due to reasons known to all of you, the project did not kickstart, even though the land for the same has been allocated in Kolkata. In the meanwhile, the Kolkata Center for Creativity is a multidisciplinary, interactive and creativity center designed by architect Pinakin Patel in 2018, and it was the first in Eastern India to make art accessible to the visually impaired and differently abled. Spearheaded by Richa Agarwal, its chairperson, the 70,000 square feet center has championed the art and cultural landscape of the contemporary India since November 2018. KCC was built from the passion of Mr. R.S. Agarwal and R.S. Goenka, the founders and the joint chairman of the Imami Group. Collecting art over the last decade has been their desire to nurture and promote creative talent from the region, which grew into a permanent space of the KCC. To broaden conversations about creativity and for creative people to connect, it also comprises of an amphitheater, exhibition hall, learning spaces, dance studio, conservation lab, books and materials, library, culinary space, craft and design outlet, and skill development sections. Integrated several expressions of art and design to highlight their common creative core. KCC encourages visitors to explore, interact, and design ideas on various art forms. Moving to the west now is the Dr. Bhaudaji Lal Museum, which opened to the public in 1857. And I mention this museum, you will know why soon, because it is Bombay's oldest museum, originally named as the Victoria and Albert Museum. But it's the only museum where the focus is the city, and it showcases Bombay's art and culture through a rare collection of fine and decorative arts that highlight early modern art practices, as well as the craftsmanship of various communities that form the Bombay Presidency. The museum was in derelict condition when it was found when it was sort of revived in 2005, and it underwent a comprehensive 5-year restoration project, which was undertaken and spearheaded by its director INTACH under the guidance of Tasneem Mehta, and supported by the MCGM, which is the Municipal Corporation of Greater Bombay, with a generous donation from the Jamnalal Bajaj Foundation, which also made it win the UNESCO's International Award for Excellence in Cultural Conservation in 2005. Post-restoration, the museum opened to the public in 2008 with an extensive exhibition program and is still till today committed to promoting contemporary art and culture in our city. It has partnered with several institutions internationally to showcase artists and exhibitions including the V&A, the British Library, the Guggenheim and the MoMA in an effort to facilitate international cultural exchange. The museum's education and outreach program aims to build and diversify the museum's audiences, which it has, and it offers a year-long postgraduate, it's a very popular course, postgraduate diploma course conducted over weekends, which covers theoretical and critical study of Indian art from the 1980s to the present. The museum embarked on an ambitious expansion plan to develop a new wing on the north side of the museum, supported again by the MCGM and private donors. The new wing is expected to be 120,000 square feet, providing new galleries and facilities including a learning center, research center, auditorium, conference center, library, archive, conservation facilities, a museum shop, cafe and restaurant. The architectural design competition for the new wing was launched in December 2013. And there were 100 expressions of interest which were received from renowned national and international firms at the first stage of the competition, of which 8 were shortlisted. An international team led by Stephen Hall was selected as the winner of the new wing of the BDL Museum. However, those plans are also on hold for the moment. The Prince of Wales Museum of Bombay was built by architect George Whittet at the turn of the last century, and it opened in 1922. Again, another very old museum of Bombay. It has been renamed as the Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj Vastu Sangrahalaya, the CSMVS in short. And it was is one of the only most beautiful designs of the Indo-Saracenic style of architecture, with its jalis, verandas, domes, wooden arched pillars, China mosaic terraces and Edwardian floor patterns. At this time, its Grade 1 heritage building is undergoing a comprehensive conservation project supported by the TCS, that's the Tata Consultancy Services, under the guidance and aegis of their current director, Sabyasachi Mukherjee. The museum projects itself as a dynamic cultural institution which presents its rich and expansive collection across 17 well-designed galleries over 3 floors and gardens. The collection, spanning nearly 5,000 years of Indian art and archaeology, are represented here alongside collections from all over the world, such as China, Japan, and Europe. Regular exhibitions and partnerships with Indian and foreign museums present new ideas for the public to learn and enjoy. The museum's flagship program, Museum on Wheels, supported by the City Group, takes exhibitions to schools and educational institutions across Maharashtra and Gujarat in a bus, reaching out to over 1 million children across India. The museum's Art Conservation Center, set up in 2008 under Anupam Saha, is the state-of-art facility that also assists other museums in India, Asia, Kuwait, Oman, and Europe. An autonomous body, the CSMVS is not supported by the government and raises its funds through ticket sales, donations, and corporate sponsorship. This calls for a dedicated and consistent effort and ensures that the museum is constantly offering engaging programs to remain relevant and meaningful. Looking into the future, the museum trustees and the Director General, Sabyasachi Mukherjee, have dedicated to work actively on an enhanced digital presence and a more intimate experience of the arts. The CSMVS wants to project itself not as an old museum, but a museum of ideas, reflecting on contemporary concerns through museum collections and programs as done during the landmark India and the World exhibition in 2017. I can give another presentation just on that exhibition. That's how brilliant it was, from art from all over India, borrowed from museums all over India. The JNAF, which is the Jahangir Nicholson Art Foundation, entered into a collaboration with the CSMVS in 2008, where the collection is now housed. Jahangir Nicholson was the ex-sheriff of Bombay, a cotton merchant, and was also on the advisory committee of the NGMA. His collection comprised of 800 works of art procured between 1968 and 2001 by Nicholson. He was who was an early collector of Indian modern art. This has now been put in a trust, which is managed by his trusted friends, Cyrus Gasdar and Kevan Kalyaniwala till today. This gallery of about 2,000 square feet, designed by Ratan Bartley Boy, bearing Nicholson's name, was created at the CSMVS Museum, along with storage facilities for the art, an office and a library space. The JNAF forms the modern and contemporary art wing of the museum, where it hosts regular exhibitions and outreach programs. The JNAF collaborates with international museums and institutions on exhibitions that they put up at their show space, and they also have the entire collection of Jahangir Nicholson on their website, a move that most contemporary museums have made today. Since 2015, Jahangir Nicholson Memorial Lecture has been held at the CSMVS, where previous editions have been conducted by Dr. Homi Baba, Dr. James Kuno, Sunil Khilnani, Ghulam Mohammad Sheikh, and Timothy Hyman. A boat ride from Bombay takes us to the 4,000 square feet Dashrath Patel Museum in Alibag, built by Pinakin Patel for Dashrath himself. The museum's 60-year-old collection boasts of photographs that create a visual essay of the history of India from independence till today, ceramics, sculptures, paintings, and design. Padma Shri and Padma Bhushan Dashrath, a senior progressive group artist, was also the founder secretary of education at the National Institute of Design in Ahmedabad for 20 years, laying the foundation stone for professional design practice and pedagogy in India. An artist from Ecole de Beaux-Arts who shared the Bullabai Memorial Studios with his contemporaries like Hussain Raza Gaitonde Padamsi, Dashrath Patel surprisingly receives no mention in books on modern and contemporary art, though he closely collaborated with outstanding luminaries like Charles Eanes, Louis Kahn, Henri Cartier-Bresson, Frei Otto, and countless others. The museum is curated by Dashrath's long-term friend Sadanand Menon and displays 6 decades of Dashrath's path-breaking work in totality. This journey through his works presents the viewer with a unique opportunity to enter the complex cartographic grid of the development of form language in contemporary India. The works have travelled to the Kolkata Centre for Creativity and to the Max Muller Bhavan in Bombay. Moving to Gujarat, the Kasturba Lalbhai Museum Complex has 3 main buildings. The main building, which is a colonial house built in 1905 under Sri Lalbhai Dalpat Bhai, showcases over 1,000 years of Indian art. It was previously the ancestral home of the Lalbhai family and was used as a residence by them till 1997. Restored and renovated by Rahul Mehrotra and his team, it opened as a museum in January 2017. Its core collection, and one of the reasons why it opened, is the artworks of the renowned Tagore family of Bengal, which were amassed during the 20th century art movement of Bengal revivalism and subsequently acquired by Sri Kasturbhai Lalbhai in the 1940s to prevent it from leaving the country. These are on display at the museum currently. The paintings on view are from the other paintings on view are from a range of tradition and styles such as Persian, Mughal, Deccani, Pahari, Rajasthani schools, Tibetan Thankas, company school portraits, modernist paintings from Bengal, and painted postcards from pre-independent India. In the adjacent buildings, which is the Claude Batley House and the gallery built by Rahul Mehrotra, the space has been created to house temporary exhibition, retrospectives of artists, and display works by young artists. Leaving the beauty of the older building untouched, a glass gallery, unique and distinctive, has been added to create extra display space. So when temporary exhibits are not exhibited, Sanjay and Jayashree Lalbhai, who are the custodians of the museum currently, display their modern and contemporary art collection at the museum. The museum has previously hosted remarkable exhibitions of Amrita Shergill, Manu Parekh, and many others, as well as talks and workshops for children. Now, this is a unique space. We're entering an airport, and any traveler who has been to the T2 terminal building at the Mumbai airport can pass their time, if they've missed a flight or otherwise, by viewing an art exhibition at India's largest public museum of tribal and modern and contemporary art. The art showcase stretches some 3 kilometers along elegantly curved walls of the Chhatrapati Shivaji International Airport. Modern art is at home here with 1,000-year-old artifacts from all over India. The special museum, with its 7,000 artworks by 1,500 artists at the Mammoth Airport, was a project initiated by the GVK Group. It is not only the largest in India, but could also be the most visited museum anywhere in the world, thanks to the 40 million passengers who pass through the terminal annually. The Jeo is a scenography exhibit put together by 66-year-old Rajiv Sethi, a globally acclaimed scenographer, with the vision of Sanjay Reddy, who is the director of the GVK Group. The walls of the museums are painted up to 18 meters high and can be seen from every floor of the terminal. There are 28 sections in the entire altogether with a different theme and each managed by its own curator. For over 4 years, a team of 500 to 600 workers restored, repaired artifacts that were being sourced from all over the country. They got permission from the ASI to pick up things that have been thrown away or being burnt. A lot of works were also created for the airport in workshops of arts and craftspeople all over India. At Jaiho, works from famous artists and painters like Manu Parekh, Ghulam Mohammad Sheikh, Nilima Sheikh, Vivan Sundaram, and textile installations by Ritu Kumar, Manish Arora and Rajiv Sethi himself rub shoulders with unknown and less well-known artists from both urban and rural parts of India. Coming back to Bombay now, into the city, established in November 2015, the Piramal Museum of Art, with its primary space being Low Parel and its upcoming construction and at museum sites at upcoming construction projects such as those in Baikala, Kurla and Mulund. The Piramal Art Foundation was started in 2014 by Ajay and Swati Piramal to preserve the artistic heritage of modern and contemporary Indian art. The Art Foundation undertakes collection, preservation and documentation of artworks for public display as well as for research and education. The 7,000 square feet space, which is in Low Parel, is a disabled-friendly public access museum pioneering a dynamic exhibition programs that activates their rare collection of Indian contemporary and modern art. The Piramal Museum of Art has presented beautifully curated exhibitions featuring works of masters such as Abanindranath Tagore, S.H. Raza, Gaitonde, K. Ramanujam, K.G. Subramaniam, and Raja Ravi Verma, amongst the many others. These exhibitions have been critically acclaimed for their research and their intensive yet lucid approach to exhibition making and design. The definition of museums, as you can see, across the world is changing, and art moves from white cube spaces to unconventional locations such as these. Most of the newly constructed Piramal buildings have become locations for the museums, giving quality shows and providing a space for dialogue and debate. Riding this wave of change is the Piramal Museum of Art, with its galleries spread across various corporate complexes in Bombay. And last but not the least is the Museum of Goa in another state, actually a union territory, which is a private contemporary art space founded, again it's an artist-run museum, private museum, by artist Dr. Subodh Kerkar in 2015. The museum was housed in a 3-story, 16,000 square feet building designed by the Goan architect Dean de Cruz in Pillarne, celebrating Goa's history and people through contemporary art. Adjoining the building is a sculpture garden which displays a few of Dr. Kerkar's works. the Museum of Goa is envisioned not just as a repository of objects, but also as a laboratory of ideas where all forms of art are in constant dialogue with each other. The museum seeks to bring art and local history, the local history of Goa, to a larger audiences, and also is a pedagogical experiment in narrative history. Histories of Goa is a permanent exhibition at the museum, offering a glimpse into multiple histories of the state, highlighting less well-known tales of its storied past. The exhibition showcases contemporary artists from Goa as well as artworks inspired by the state. So now, knowing how long it takes to build a museum in India, especially when the new wing of NGMA Delhi took 22 years to build, we have realized that by the time the project in India gets completed or even starts, they're already outdated. Still, the need for new museums is imperative, as the current state-owned museums or government museums have become irrelevant to our times and to our generation due to the lack of interesting, well-curated shows, important retrospectives, international exhibits, and publicity about all these. Galleries today, private galleries, private museums, private foundations have constantly filled the gaps by holding retrospectives and museum quality shows. But is that enough? Is a question I ask. The challenges of building a museum have been remembered by many passionate collectors in this country. I have named a few, but they are mostly struck down due to, finances, politics with the governments, and many other factors. However, many have also come alive, and many are going to, with their magnificent initiatives and forward-looking plans. So, is the future of museums of India still bright? I end my presentation with this today.
Thank you very much for a most fascinating journey towards museums of the country. I have a couple of questions quickly. One is from Mr. Devashish Gupta, who asks, why are so many new projects like Kamoma and the new museum at Mumbai, that is at Baudaji, not being implemented?
The K-MoMA, I'm not allowed to talk, is, it's understandable. There are problems with the government, so, I don't know why they have not been implemented. But the Baudaji Lad is it's one of the oldest museums. And it is only because INTACH decided to revive the museum in 2005, and in 2008 it opened. In 2003 the work started. It took 5 years. INTACH led by Tasneem with a major donation from the Jamnalal Bajaj Foundation. Hence, like I mentioned, these are all private museums or private-public partnerships. Without that, it's impossible. Bihar Museum in this presentation is the only one which is owned by the government and is currently still being funded by the government. So Baudaji Lad is very much an active organization.
No, their expansion, is it?
The expansion, again, I'm not allowed to talk, but yeah, there are problems.
The next question is from Kaveri Narang, also an INTACH member. Since the focus is a museum of the future, will there be any coverage of utilizing digital initiatives to reach audiences?
Most of the private museums have already started using. Even the Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj Museum, Vastu Sangrahalaya, has started using a lot of, they have audio guides, they have video guides, they have even digital displays, which you can sort of touch and feel for the children. They've started a children museum, which also has a lot of interactive displays during certain exhibits. I know the KNMA also, has these kind of interactive exhibits, but in Bombay, the Chhatrapati Shivaji Museum definitely has pioneered in this, and many other private museums are following this mode. They're also making all these museums accessible to disabled people, to blind people, and these are the thought processes behind many of the museum activities in Bombay. But I can't speak much about what they are planning for the future, but these are in the plans.
There's one more question from Mr. Rajiv Soni. He asks, is anything being done to showcase the rich art and cultural heritage of the Northeast?
You know, it's so sad that I had only one private museum to talk about from the East itself. And in the Northeast, unfortunately, while their own tribal art as well as their own art from the Northeast region is being promoted, there are a lot of collectives that are selling through various channels and promoting the art. But for museums, I know in the Northeast, I did see a museum in Meghalaya, which again is like a city museum and talks about the various the Garo, Khasi, Jantia tribes and their uniforms, etc. But there is no modern and contemporary art museum in the Northeast. And I do not know of any collector or anyone who has plans for the same. Whether it's the Northeast or the East, apart from KMOMA or KCC.
There's only one ethnographic museum which I know of in Shillong, which has been set up by Don Bosco fraternity.
Yes, that's the one I'm referring to actually.
Okay.
Yeah. But that's not a contemporary art museum.
Correct, that is true.
Yeah.
There's a question from Mr. Gaurav Jalan, also an INTACH member. How does one embark collecting ASI registered works from a variety of regions? I mentioned this since there's hopefully a level of authenticity in these works.
I'm not authorized to answer that question, but if you are asking about how museums collect, I mean, they obviously have, the right wherewithal and knowledge. But if you're asking how private collectors collect, of course, I know that there are private dealers who deal with in artifacts and antiquities which are ASI registered. And I can privately give you the names of some, but I'm not going to mention them here. But there are art dealers who deal with artifacts that are registered by the ASI.
Okay, then there is my co-convener Kanchana Mukhopadhyay of INTACH. She wants to add 2 facts. So may I ask Kanchana to please say what you want to say. Kanchana, you are unmuted, you can speak.
Yeah, I did. I unmuted myself. Can you hear?
Yeah.
No, I just wanted to tell 2 more things, that there is another museum which has come up recently that is called Nauka Ghar in Kolkata, which is dealing with the different boat making techniques and boat shapes from all over India. That fellow, Sharu Bhattacharya, he was trained in Viking Museum of Denmark, and this is a new addition to Calcutta's museum scenario. And the second thing is that from the eastern part, Saloni, I found that you may add these 2 things because these are the 2 new museums I know which has a grade. The second one is in Jobra, the Jobra Maritime Museum, which came up in 2014. Actually, there was nothing. It was a ship repairing workshop which was abandoned and built in 1864, which has been turned into a museum. It was given by the government, and now it's because they wanted to showcase the rich maritime heritage of Odisha. And they had almost nothing as original museum objects. So they have reconstructed almost everything. And once abandoned, the space was utilized by the boons and anti-socials. Now it has become one of the most important tourist spots between Cuttack and Bhubaneswar. These are the 2 new additions in the eastern part of India. Which is mentionable. Of course, there are private collectors who are collecting, and this was an old building, and the Nauka Ghar building is nothing to be mentioned, but the idea is very unique. So you may think to have a look to it.
So, Mrs. Mukhopadhyay, this specific presentation of mine was only to deal with museums. The 15 museums I covered, 2 of which didn't take off, which is the Kemoma and the Koka, are only dealing with modern, which is post-independence, and contemporary art in India. They're not dealing with antiquities, textiles, and all of that. There could be more to these museums, but mostly these museums showcase, besides, I mean, if they're government museums, they showcase their permanent collection. But like I mentioned, the Bihar Museum, which has been created for contemporary art practices, it is not to store, relics of the past. So these are specific museums that I've covered, only which deal with modern and contemporary visual art in India. The ones you mentioned like that, there are many in India. I didn't mention the Tapi collection, which is one of the best collections for textile, started by the Garden Vareli family in Ahmedabad. There is the Calico Museum of Textiles in Ahmedabad. So there are lots of other museums which, focus on different things. But the ones I have covered in today's scope are only those that focus on modern and contemporary art, whether they're state-owned, whether they're private-public partnerships, or that they're private museums. It's art of the future.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, just to add that Jobra Museum is also an INTACH initiative, incidentally.
Oh, nice.
Anyway, so if there are no more questions, I'd request Kanchana to please convey our thanks to Saloni on behalf of INTACH.
Yes, on behalf of INTACH, of course, it was a mind-boggling presentation because we never had the idea of these museums coming up, and they are so modern. So you have given us an inside view of these museums. I am really thankful to you, and I hope the INTACH members, they have enjoyed, and thank you so much, Saloni, for your presentation. On behalf of INTACH, our convener, and from myself, you deserve a great thanks. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Saloni.
And just to mention that this is being recorded and it will be put up on our YouTube channel, and I will convey to all the members the link, and they can enjoy this at those who have not been able to attend. So Saloni will, as soon as you can let us have the link, we will do. And thank you again once more, and thanks Nayantara for introducing Saloni to us, and we look forward to having you in Calcutta when you are here next.
Yeah.
Let's hope that will be soon. I don't know.
Yeah, look forward.
Yeah.
Look
She has a
forward.
Calcutta connection, incidentally. Her grandparents live here.
Yeah, Amar Nani Badi Kolkata ache.
Very good, very good.
That's all I know how to speak.
Thanks, Saloni.
Okay, bye.
Bye, bye, bye.
Okay, bye-bye everyone.